Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Arden, and today we're talking about Seven Secrets number one. So, this is a new series published by Boom Studios, written by Tom Taylor, illustrated by Danielle Di Nicolio, colored by Walter Baiamonte, and with color assistance by Katia Rinaldi, and then lettered by Ed Dukeshire. Overall, um, I was kind of excited for this book. Tom Taylor's a pretty cool writer, and I thought there was a lot of potential to him taking on a new series or something like that. Though I have to say, I found it kind of middling, and while this series has potential, I think it's a strong example of how the first issue of a book really isn't enough sometimes, especially in a new series. And I think I would much rather push for waiting for the first trade to come out and you have a better sense of what the larger story is. Because this thing introduces a lot of stuff, but doesn't really have a lot of concrete content to it, in my opinion, that got me super hooked for the rest of the series. So that's sort of my spoiler free review. I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of what happens, though, because the idea is there's these seven secrets, as the story is named, that have the potential to absolutely destroy the world if they fell into the wrong hands. And we get a sense of what one of them are right off the bat. They show all these people getting slaughtered just to get to one of the cases, a case marked number one. They pry it open, and this huge, giant white light envelops everything. Um, I kind of think it would be more interesting if the secrets were a little more literal and they were actual things like, oh, this country has this technology and it needs to keep it secret, or else the entire world could erupt into war. And there's another one that's like a bioweapon or something, and maybe that's what it is, but I don't think so. I think it's more mystical in nature, or whatever. But the point is, there's this order that guards all these secrets, and we kind of focus in on this couple that's been with the order for a long time and protects one of the cases as they're being raided by these mysterious mass ninja like figures. There's where this series is strong is there's a great bit of action, and all those wonderful artists I mentioned do a really good job at creating a very dynamic and human feeling story with a cool sense of animation that almost reminds me of like Avatar: The Last Airbender or something like that. I quite like that aspect of it on the whole. We then learn that the couple, I guess, like had a hookup at some point or one night stand, and the woman is pregnant, which is super forbidden and frowned down upon. And there's a whole trial as a result. The parents are basically given a choice, and they agree to give up the child to the order to be trained as a future operative so that they can continue to serve and protect the case. They have case number seven. And then it kind of cuts to the modern day, and this guy called Amon is coming and is, I guess, hunting down these cases. The father character gets, I believe, horribly murdered. Oh, yes, he gets decapitated. And meanwhile, this child, Casper, is just out there having been raised and kind of is narrating these stories. And the mom is just gonna have to seek him out, I guess, and he's somehow related to all of this. Or she. I'm not. I think it's a boy. Yes, it's a boy. Um, and that's really all we know so far. And that's where I kind of feel it's a little like, oh, there's some interesting stuff kind of going on here. Um, but I wish they would could have the first trade, for example, and I could give a better sense of whether or not this series is worth investing your time or money in. As it stands, I would say no, because going issue to issue, this really kind of feels like it could be pretty generic. The Amon character kind of plays up that line. But on the other hand, I have a hard time pegging down what kind of story this is. There's like a secret order of these monks, but they also use high like technology and weapon like more advanced weaponry and seem to have a certain demeanor beyond a normal monastery. Like they're very they have a very strong sense of contemporary dialogue in the way they speak, even at a formal trial, which is ceremonial. So there's like, it's almost like that whole monastery side of it is more of a sense of tradition, because the action and how that stuff plays out feels a lot more like a James Bond franchise with like high tech gear and action and dynamic like villains and heroes fighting each other and operatives dying in the field as a big opening. That stuff all feels very much like a James Bond story. So I don't want to be down on it too much because it's got great artwork and it kind of reminds me of almost a mix of something like Avatar with James Bond, and that's pretty cool. I think some of these artists worked on some of the Avatar comics, which is why this artwork looks familiar, but I would have to look that up to be sure. Either way, it's pretty fun, but like I said, I'd much rather see more out of this series before I could definitively state whether or not it's going to be worth it in the long term. Because as it stands, it's okay, um, but there really isn't a ton of substance to anything here, or like what we do get is some pretty baseline character stuff and nothing I haven't really seen before, even if it kind of is blending a bunch of different genres into something new. Like there is a lot of potential to all of this. It's got great art, it's kind of striking a unique tone, but one issue doesn't really feel like enough to introduce everything. What it does remind me a little bit of is Firepower, which I kind of liked at first. I haven't really bothered to check it out beyond its prelude because at the end of the day, it's just Robert Kirkman kind of ripping off Iron Fist, it feels like. But it has the same sort of dynamics where there's this big backstory they want to introduce. And that first Firepower prelude, I think wisely came out as a trade, which definitely helped me like it a lot more because it could take its time a little bit more in establishing the main character. And I thought that series was a little stronger because of that. I wish they kind of did something similar with Seven Secrets, because if they had started this thing out with a trade, I think I could have gotten a little more of a sense of whether or not this story is worth it. Because as it stands, I'm probably going to wait a good 6 months or so before that first trade comes out and I can get a better sense of this, because I don't think it's worth the money to go issue by issue for this thing. So that's all I really have to say about this new series. It was, it is promising, but it just didn't quite have enough for me to really sell me on it overall. And that's a damn shame. I always feel bad when I don't quite connect with an indie comic because usually I do. And it feels nice to do that when it's something outside of the big two, but it doesn't always happen. And the last couple of indie reviews we've done, this Black Stars Above, haven't really connected with me as much as other books have, even among the big two, which is interesting. I try not to judge them too much by different standards, but I think it's fair to sometimes. But I don't really think I was judging Seven Secrets by anything elevated. Marvel and DC certainly benefit from having all of that backstory to sort of springboard a series. So I do give indie comics a little bit of leeway in that regard. But so many of their number one issues don't have enough on their own to really sell it. And you really need that first trade to really get people going. Or you have to kind of point to series that do have a strong first issue, like Saga, certain Archie books, like some of their weird stuff, such as Archie versus Predator or Afterlife with Archie, have really strong starts to them. Pulp came out just as a trade, for example, and it was pretty strong on the whole. Hey, Gigolo, thanks for joining us. Saying damn. I mean, I don't know what I did. This one I didn't look up other people's opinions or anything. I don't know where I stand in regard to other critics or readers. So I'm very curious about that. So if you're watching right now and have any thoughts, feel free to share them. Or if you're watching later, feel free to do so in the comment section below, because I'm curious. But yeah, I just didn't really connect with this one much. But I think it would need more time to do that. And that kind of gets into the reflections of like what's best to publish with these things. And I thought it was a pretty cool choice to kind of have like a prologue just come out as a trade for Firepower. And I think that sort of thing could have worked with Seven Secrets or a billion other um, indie series I've read in recent memory. Some of them, Bitter Root's a good example of that. I thought the first trade was great, but I don't know if that first issue would really be enough to sell me on it. It didn't really. I had to kind of get through that whole book to really be a fan, made a fan, we'll say. Once and Future, um, that's a good example, I think, of that sort of thing. Jagola is saying, "Damn, I trust your judgment." Yeah, I mean, I think my judgment really comes down to a not recommend, comma, because I think you should wait for the trade before you check this thing out, um, which saves you a little more money, and still that money goes to the creators and stuff. But on its own, yeah, I don't really think it's a particularly strong first issue. Right now in the world of indie comics, I think your better bets with some of the ongoings. Like, I really like Two. I mentioned Once and Future, and that other one I mentioned. um, oh shoot! Oh well, it's gone. But you get the idea. Like, there's just better stuff going on right now. Completely slipped my mind. I had three on my mental list, and by the time I got to number three, I lost it. Oh well. Uh, so that's all I really had to say on this. But like I said, feel free to let me know if you disagree or anything like that, because I'm curious. But we still have one last comic from last week. I just hadn't gotten around to yet because of work reasons more than anything else, and it's Death Metal #3 in all its shiny glory. So stay tuned for that. We'll probably I'm just gonna call it now and say I'm gonna aim to have that on for 7:30, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time, or then here on Comic Island. Okay.